Listen to me now. When people hurt you in return, it's not love, it's comfort. It's familiarity. They come back not because they value you, but because they know how to manipulate the parts of you that are still healing. They see the cracks in your foundation, the doubts in your heart, and they use that as their way in. It's not about who they are, it's about what you allow. When someone who has hurt you comes back into your life, it is often not for the reasons you think. It's easy to believe they've changed, that they've finally come to their senses and realized how much you mean to them. But the truth, more often than not, lies elsewhere. The real reason they return is because they know you haven't realized your worth yet. They see the gaps in your self-esteem, the unhealed parts of you that still long for their validation, and they use that as their way back in. People like this are drawn to the places in you that feel uncertain, the areas where you question your own value. They know how to say the right things to make you second-guess your instincts, to make you ignore the pain they've already caused. They don't come back out of love, they come back because they sense an opportunity. They sense that you might still be open to them, still willing to forgive, still looking for answers they'll never truly provide. And this is not a reflection of their strength. It's a reflection of your doubts. When you haven't fully stepped into the truth of who you are, when you haven't embraced your own value, it becomes easier for others to manipulate your emotions. They can pick up on your hesitations, on your need for closure or your hope for change. They exploit the fact that you haven't yet decided you're worth more than what they've given you. They know that as long as you question your own worth, you'll leave the door open, even if just a little. And that's all they need, a crack, a sliver of hope that they can step back into your life. You see, people who repeatedly hurt others often do so because they lack accountability. They don't see the harm they've done as a reason to stay away. They see it as a challenge to see how much they can get away with. And when you haven't fully embraced your own value, you unintentionally make it easy for them. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You believe the words over the actions. You let them convince you that this time will be different, even when deep down you know better. It's not that you're weak, it's that you're still learning. You're still navigating what it means to stand firm in your own value. And that's okay. Growth is a process, not an event. But until you fully step into that growth, you'll find yourself stuck in the same cycle. They'll leave, they'll hurt you, and they'll come back, all because they know they can. They'll push boundaries, test limits, and wait to see if you'll let them in again. And if you do, it's not because you're not strong, it's because you're human. You're still figuring out where your boundaries begin and where their access to you must end. This is where the shift needs to happen. You must understand that your worth isn't determined by whether someone stays or goes, by whether they see your value or not. Your worth is inherent. It doesn't waver, doesn't diminish, and doesn't disappear just because someone failed to recognize it. And the moment you begin to truly believe that, the game changes. Because once you know your worth, you stop tolerating anything that contradicts it. You stop entertaining people who come back without genuine change. You stop looking for apologies that will never be enough. You stop hoping for closure from someone who only ever brings chaos. When you know your worth, you see their return for what it is, an attempt to test your resolve. You realize that their words, no matter how convincing, can't undo the damage they've already done. You understand that their return isn't about love or growth, it's about control. It's about them trying to maintain a foothold in your life because they sense that without you, their world feels less certain. They're not coming back because they've changed, they're coming back because they don't want you to. But knowing your worth isn't just about recognizing their patterns, it's about recognizing your power. It's about understanding that you don't have to let them back in. You don't have to answer their calls, respond to their messages, or entertain their apologies. You don't have to justify your decision to walk away. You don't owe them another chance. What you owe is to yourself the chance to move forward, to heal, and to build a life free from their influence. When you start to live from a place of knowing your worth, everything shifts. You stop feeling like you need their validation because you've already validated yourself. You stop feeling like you need closure because you've given yourself the permission to move on. You stop feeling like you're missing out because you understand that what's ahead is far greater than anything they could offer. It's not an easy journey, but it's a necessary one. And the first step is to recognize the truth. They come back because they see the parts of you that are still unsure, still searching, still hoping. But those parts don't define you. They're just a chapter in your story, not the whole book. And once you start to write from a place of strength, clarity, and self-love, you'll realize that the only person who needs to come back into your life is the version of you that knows exactly what you deserve. That's the version of you that will close the door for good, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself, for your peace, and for your future. When someone who has caused you pain comes back into your life, they often rely on the familiarity and comfort you once shared. They know the rhythm of your conversations, the softness of your heart, and the history you've built together. That familiarity gives them a sense of security, a safe entry point to step back into your world without having to earn it. Manipulation thrives in that space because familiarity makes you lower your guard. It makes you question your instincts and allows them to slip back into your life without facing the consequences of their actions. The comfort they feel with you isn't necessarily mutual. For them, it's a place to return to when they feel unsettled or uncertain in their own lives. They aren't drawn back because they value you, they're drawn back because they see you as a refuge, a safe zone, and because you're familiar with their patterns, the way they talk, the way they apologize, the way they explain their behavior. It can be easy to fall into the same dynamic again. Familiarity tricks you into believing that maybe this time will be different. But in reality, it's just the same cycle repeating itself. People who manipulate others understand the power of comfort. They know that humans naturally gravitate toward what feels familiar, even if it's not good for them. They use this to their advantage by showing up at just the right moment when you're feeling lonely, when you're doubting yourself, or when you're trying to move on. They come back not because they've changed, but because they sense an opportunity. They know the bond you shared still holds some weight in your heart. And they lean into that, exploiting your willingness to believe in them one more time. Familiarity also creates a false sense of safety. Because you know this person, because you've shared experiences and memories, it feels safer to let them in than it would with someone new. That's the trap. Manipulators use that sense of safety to rebuild the connection, but their intentions are rarely aligned with your well-being. They're not coming back to nurture the relationship or make things right. They're coming back to see how much control they still have. They rely on the comfort of your shared past to make you overlook the warning signs in the present. This manipulation often feels subtle. It starts with small gestures, a text that reminds you of a shared memory, a call to check in, or a casual apology that seems heartfelt. They tap into the comfort of the bond you once had, making you feel like they still care. But if you look closer, you'll notice that their actions don't align with their words. They say they've changed, but they avoid taking real accountability. They promise to do better, but their behavior remains inconsistent. That's because their goal isn't to rebuild trust. It's to keep you within their reach. Comfort also makes you question your instincts. When someone you know so well comes back into your life, it's easy to second guess the boundaries you've set. You remember the good times, the moments when they made you laugh or feel loved, and you wonder if maybe they finally realized what they lost. Manipulators count on this. They use the familiarity of your history to cloud your judgment, making you doubt the very reasons you distanced yourself in the first place. They know that comfort can blur the lines between what's acceptable and what's not, and they exploit that to their advantage. Over time, familiarity can even make you justify their actions. You think, well, they've been in my life for so long, or maybe I overreacted before, but those thoughts stem from the comfort of what you know, not the reality of their behavior. Manipulators use this to shift the narrative, turning the focus away from their mistakes and onto your willingness to forgive. They make you feel like giving them another chance is the natural thing to do, because it feels easier than starting over or maintaining your boundaries. The comfort they exploit doesn't just come from your shared history, it also comes from your own patterns of behavior. If you're someone who tends to forgive easily or avoid confrontation, they'll rely on that. They'll tap into your tendencies, knowing exactly what to say to make you lower your defenses. They don't have to be overtly aggressive or demanding, they just need to be patient, waiting for you to let your guard down naturally. That's the insidious nature of manipulation. It doesn't always feel forceful. Sometimes it feels like an old friend slipping back into your life, only to remind you why you distanced yourself in the first place. But familiarity isn't love, and comfort isn't trust. Just because someone knows you well doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. Manipulators often confuse the two on purpose, making you believe that their return is a sign of care or commitment. They use your shared past as a tool to bypass the effort it takes to build something real and healthy. They want the benefits of your presence without the responsibility of truly earning it. And as long as you allow that dynamic to continue, they'll keep coming back, taking what they can without giving anything meaningful in return. It's important to recognize that manipulation thrives not because you're weak, but because you're human. Everyone craves connection, understanding, and familiarity, and manipulators know how to tap into those needs. They exploit the comfort you feel with them, using it as a way to avoid accountability. But the more you understand this dynamic, the more you can see it for what it is, a pattern that benefits them at your expense. So familiarity and comfort may feel safe, but they're not always indicators of what's right. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step out of that comfort zone and choose what's best for your peace and well-being. There's a truth that's often difficult to face. Broken people hurt others not because of who you are, but because of what they are struggling with inside. Their actions, while deeply painful, are rarely about you. They are reflections of their own inner turmoil, their insecurities, and their inability to confront the parts of themselves that feel fractured. When someone is broken, they often seek ways to alleviate their pain, and sometimes that involves transferring their hurt onto others. It's not fair, but it's the reality of what happens when people haven't dealt with their own wounds. Hurt people often find themselves in a cycle of pain, unable to break free because they haven't done the work to heal. Instead of addressing the root cause of their struggles, they lash out, consciously or unconsciously, in an attempt to feel some semblance of control. For them, hurting someone else can create a temporary distraction from their own suffering. It's as if they believe that by spreading the pain, they can lessen their own, but all it does is perpetuate the cycle. They don't realize, or perhaps they do, and ignore it, that in hurting others, they are simply reinforcing their brokenness. When someone who is broken enters a relationship or connection, they often bring with them the weight of their unresolved issues. These issues can manifest in many ways: insecurity, anger, manipulation, or a lack of empathy. They may project their fears and failures onto others, making you feel like you're the problem when, in reality, they're wrestling with demons they haven't yet confronted. Their brokenness clouds their judgment and distorts their ability to love or connect in a healthy way. As a result, their pain seeps into the lives of those around them, creating wounds where there should have been trust and understanding. What's heartbreaking is that broken people often don't intend to hurt others. Many times, they don't even realize the damage they're causing. They're so consumed by their own pain that they can't see the ripple effects of their actions. Their words and behavior come from a place of survival, of trying to shield themselves from further harm. But in doing so, they end up causing harm to those who care about them the most. It's a paradox. The people they hurt are often the ones who are trying to help them heal. Yet, instead of accepting that love and care, they push it away, sometimes violently, because it feels too vulnerable, too risky. When you encounter someone like this, it's easy to take their behavior personally. Their words cut deep, their actions leave scars, and their inability to see your worth can make you question your own value. But their brokenness is not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of the battles they're fighting within themselves. Understanding this doesn't excuse their behavior or lessen the pain they've caused, but it does help you see the situation more clearly. It reminds you that their actions are not about your shortcomings, but about their inability to cope with their own. Broken people often operate from a place of fear. They fear rejection, abandonment, and failure, so they lash out in preemptive strikes to protect themselves. They fear being vulnerable, so they build walls and keep people at arm's length, even if it means hurting them in the process. They fear facing their own pain, so they distract themselves by creating chaos in the lives of others. These fears are deeply rooted, often stemming from past experiences of trauma or loss that they haven't yet dealt with. And until they confront those fears and take steps to heal, they will continue to hurt others as a way of coping. One of the hardest truths to accept is that you cannot fix someone who is broken. No amount of love, patience, or understanding can heal someone who is unwilling to do the work themselves. You can support them, you can encourage them, but the journey of healing is one they must undertake on their own. Trying to fix them often leads to more pain for you because their brokenness doesn't just hurt them, it affects everyone around them. You may find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid triggering their insecurities or anger, but no matter how much you give, it will never be enough to fill the void they feel inside. The pain caused by broken people often leaves a lasting impact. It can make you question your worth, doubt your ability to trust, and harden your heart against future connections. But it's important to remember that their actions don't define you. Their inability to see your value doesn't diminish it. Their failure to love you in the way you deserve doesn't mean you are unlovable. Their brokenness is their burden, not yours. And it's not your responsibility to carry it for them. Choosing to distance yourself from a broken person doesn't mean you don't care about them. It means you care about yourself enough to protect your own peace and well-being. It's not an easy decision, especially if you've invested time and energy into the relationship, but sometimes it's necessary. You can still wish them healing and growth from afar, but you don't have to sacrifice yourself in the process. The cycle of brokenness can only be broken when the individual decides to face their pain and take steps toward healing. Until then, they will continue to hurt others in an attempt to feel whole. Recognizing this doesn't make their actions hurt any less. but it does help you see the situation for what it is. It gives you the clarity to step away if needed and the strength to protect your own heart. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds you that their brokenness is not your fault. How people treat you is often a reflection of what you tolerate and what you communicate, whether consciously or unconsciously. You may not realize it, but every interaction teaches others how far they can go, what boundaries they can cross, and what is acceptable in your relationship with them. From the way you respond to disrespect to the silence you hold, when mistreated, you are always setting the tone for how others engage with you. When you allow someone to repeatedly disregard your feelings, you're not just enduring their behavior, you're teaching them that their actions have no consequences. If they speak to you harshly and you brush it off without addressing it, they learn that it's okay to talk to you that way. If they show up only when it's convenient for them, and you always make yourself available, you're signaling that your time holds less value than theirs. Each of these instances may seem small in isolation, but over time, they compound, creating a pattern that becomes the foundation of how others see and treat you. It's not about blaming yourself for others' actions, but about recognizing the role you play in setting the standard for how you're treated. Your boundaries or lack of them create a framework that others follow. If you don't have clear boundaries, people may unintentionally or intentionally push limits, not because they're inherently cruel, but because there's no guideline showing them where the line is. Humans are creatures of habit, and when they see that a behavior is consistently met with acceptance or indifference, they naturally assume it's permissible. Teaching others how to treat you starts with self-awareness. You have to understand your own worth before you can expect others to respect it. If you don't value yourself, it's unlikely that others will either. This is why confidence and self-respect are so crucial. When you carry yourself with an air of self-worth, it commands attention, and it quietly communicates to others that you expect to be treated with dignity. On the other hand, when you second-guess yourself, shrink in the face of conflict, or constantly seek validation, it signals that your value is up for debate. People pick up on these cues, even if subconsciously, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. There's power in the way you respond to mistreatment. When someone crosses a line, your reaction sets the tone for what happens next. If you address the issue firmly and respectfully, you send a clear message that you recognize your worth and won't tolerate being disrespected. If you ignore the behavior, hoping it will go away on its own, you inadvertently encourage it to continue. Silence can be interpreted as consent, and while avoiding confrontation may feel easier in the moment, it often leads to more significant problems down the line. Many people fear asserting their boundaries because they worry about being seen as difficult or unkind. But setting boundaries isn't about being harsh. It's about protecting your peace and ensuring that your relationships are built on mutual respect. It's not just for your benefit, but also for theirs. When you set boundaries, you help others understand how to engage with you in a healthy, constructive way. You eliminate confusion and create an environment where both parties can thrive. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out. They are guidelines that foster understanding and respect. The way you treat yourself also plays a significant role in teaching others how to treat you. If you constantly put yourself last, neglect your own needs, or speak poorly about yourself, you're showing others that you don't prioritize your well-being. People mirror what they see. If they observe you accepting less than you deserve, they may assume it's okay to give you less. Self-care isn't selfish, it's a way of modeling the kind of treatment you expect from others. When you treat yourself with kindness and respect, you set a standard that others are more likely to follow. It's also essential to recognize when someone isn't willing to respect your boundaries. No matter how clearly you communicate your needs or how firmly you stand your ground, there will always be people who test limits or disregard them altogether. This is where your actions become even more critical. Choosing to distance yourself from those who consistently disrespect you is a powerful way of reinforcing your worth. It shows that you're not willing to compromise your values for the sake of keeping someone in your life. Sometimes teaching others how to treat you means walking away when they refuse to learn. Consistency is key in this process. You can't enforce boundaries one day and let them slide the next, expecting people to respect them. Mixed signals create confusion and diminish the impact of your efforts. Teaching others how to treat you requires clarity, consistency, and patience. It's not about demanding respect, but about embodying it in the way you live, the way you interact, and the way you respond to challenges. It's also important to acknowledge that not everyone will treat you well, no matter what you do. There are individuals who thrive on control, manipulation, or simply disregard for others' feelings. While you can't change their behavior, you can control how you react to it. Removing yourself from toxic situations is one of the most effective ways to teach others that you won't tolerate mistreatment. Walking away isn't weakness, it's strength. It's a declaration that you value yourself enough to prioritize your peace over someone else's dysfunction. Teaching others how to treat you is about creating a life where respect, kindness, and mutual understanding are the norms. It's about recognizing your own value and demanding that others do the same, not through force, but through example. It's about refusing to settle for less than you deserve and holding yourself to a standard that inspires others to rise to meet it. The process may not always be easy, but the results are worth it. Relationships built on respect, interactions grounded in dignity, and a life where your worth is never in question. Closure is often misunderstood as something we must receive from someone else, a conversation, an apology, or an explanation that magically makes the pain subside. We wait for that moment when they'll finally say the words we've been longing to hear or admit their wrongdoing, believing it will unlock the peace we've been craving. But the truth is, relying on someone else for closure keeps us bound to their actions and choices. It gives them power over our emotional well-being, power they may not deserve or even care to hold. Closure doesn't come from them, it comes from within. It's a decision you make, a process you navigate, and a gift you give yourself. When someone hurts you, especially deeply, it's natural to want answers. Why did they do it? Did they care at all? Was it something you did? These questions can spiral endlessly in your mind, keeping you stuck in a loop of overthinking and self-doubt. You replay the moments, searching for clues that might explain their behavior, as if understanding their reasons will somehow erase the pain. But even if they were to offer you an explanation, would it truly satisfy you? Words, no matter how heartfelt or rational, can't undo what's been done. They can't erase the memories, the betrayal, or the scars left behind. Closure isn't about what they say, it's about how you choose to move forward, despite the absence of those answers. Waiting for closure from someone else often leads to disappointment, because not everyone is capable of giving it. Some people are unaware of the harm they've caused, too self-absorbed to care, or unwilling to take accountability. Others may refuse to engage because facing their mistakes would mean confronting their own flaws and weaknesses. Their inability or unwillingness to provide closure doesn't mean your pain is invalid. It doesn't diminish the hurt you feel or the importance of your experience. But it does highlight an essential truth: closure must come from within, because relying on someone else to heal your wounds puts your happiness in their hands. Closure is an act of reclaiming your power. It's acknowledging that you can't control what someone else does or doesn't do, but you can control how you respond. It's recognizing that you have the ability to heal even without their input. It doesn't mean excusing their behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It means choosing not to let their actions define your present or your future. Closure is a decision to let go of the need for validation, apology, or explanation, and to focus instead on your own growth and peace. This process requires you to sit with your emotions, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. It's tempting to avoid the pain, to distract yourself, or to numb the feelings with busyness or other coping mechanisms. But true closure comes from facing those emotions head on, acknowledging the hurt, and allowing yourself to grieve what was lost. Whether it's the loss of a relationship, trust, or a version of yourself that existed before the pain, grieving is an essential step. It's through this process of acceptance and release that you begin to create space for healing. Forgiveness often plays a role in finding closure, but it's important to understand what forgiveness truly means. Forgiveness isn't about condoning their actions or pretending they didn't hurt you. It's not about letting them off the hook or reconciling with them. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment and anger that keeps you tethered to the past. It's saying, I choose to release this burden because I deserve peace. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. It's a personal decision that allows you to move forward without the baggage of bitterness. Finding closure within yourself also involves redefining your narrative. When someone hurts you, it's easy to internalize the pain as a reflection of your worth. You might start to believe that their actions were a result of something you lacked or something you did wrong. But their behavior says more about them than it does about you. Choosing closure means rejecting the false narratives that diminish your value and embracing the truth of your inherent worth. You are not defined by their treatment of you, and their inability to love or respect you is not a reflection of your lovability or value as a person. One of the most empowering aspects of self-closure is the realization that healing is an active process. It's not something that happens to you. It's something you choose to pursue. It's in the steps you take every day to prioritize your well-being, whether through therapy, journaling, meditation, or leaning on a support system of people who uplift you. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means integrating the experience into your life in a way that strengthens you rather than breaks you. It's about learning the lessons the pain has to teach without letting it define your future. Closure also involves setting boundaries both with the person who hurt you and within yourself. If they continue to try to re-enter your life, it's up to you to decide whether their presence aligns with your healing journey. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment, it's about protecting your peace. It's also about recognizing the patterns within yourself that may have allowed their behavior to persist and committing to breaking those patterns moving forward. Boundaries are a way of affirming your worth and creating a life where you're no longer dependent on anyone else's actions for your happiness. Closure is about reclaiming your narrative, your power, and your peace. It's a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and growth. It's not about erasing the pain, but transforming it into strength. It's about choosing to move forward, not because they've made amends, but because you've decided that you deserve better. Closure doesn't come from their words or actions, it comes from within you, in the quiet moments when you choose to let go of what was and embrace what can be. Taking back your power is not about controlling someone else's actions or making them see the error of their ways. It's about reclaiming control over your own life and emotions. Too often we leave doors open for people who have already shown us that they do not respect our boundaries, our feelings, or our worth. We give them the benefit of the doubt, hoping they'll change or that this time will be different. But in doing so, we surrender our power. We allow them to dictate how we feel, how we move forward, and whether or not we heal. Taking back your power begins with a firm decision to close the door and leave it closed, not for their sake, but for yours. When someone repeatedly hurts you, their behavior is not accidental. It's a pattern, and patterns are not broken by chance, they are broken by choice. By leaving the door open even slightly, you give them permission to continue the cycle. They come and go as they please because they know they can. Every time you allow them back into your life, you reinforce the idea that their actions have no real consequences. They learn that they can disrespect your boundaries and still have access to you. Closing the door is not an act of anger or revenge, it's an act of self-preservation. It's saying, I value myself too much to allow this to continue. Closing the door also sends a powerful message to yourself. It's a declaration that you are no longer willing to settle for less than you deserve. It's a reminder that you have the strength to walk away from situations that do not serve you, even when it's hard. This decision is not always easy. It requires you to confront your fears, your doubts, and the part of you that still hopes for a different outcome. But it's in this act of closure that you rediscover your power. You realize that your happiness and healing are not dependent on someone else's behavior, but on your own choices. Taking back your power means recognizing the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiving someone does not mean you have to let them back into your life. Forgiveness is about releasing the anger and resentment that keep you tied to the past. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional weight of what they did so that you can move forward. Reconciliation, on the other hand, requires trust, respect, and a willingness to change things that are often absent in people who repeatedly hurt you. By closing the door, you are not refusing to forgive, you are refusing to reconcile with someone who has not earned that privilege. Part of reclaiming your power involves understanding why you've kept the door open in the first place. Sometimes it's out of fear of being alone, fear of the unknown, or fear of losing a connection you once valued. Other times it's out of hope that they'll change, that things will go back to how they used to be, or that they'll finally give you the closure you've been waiting for. These fears and hopes are valid, but they can also be traps. They keep you stuck in a cycle of waiting and wishing instead of taking action to create the life you deserve. Closing the door means confronting these fears and hopes head on and choosing to prioritize your peace over the illusion of control. Walking away from someone who has hurt you is not about proving a point or making them feel regret. It's about prioritizing yourself. It's about creating space for the things and people who truly align with your values and your worth. When you close the door, you open yourself up to new opportunities, healthier relationships, and a deeper sense of self-respect. You start to see that your value does not depend on someone else's ability to recognize it. You are worthy simply because you exist, and you deserve to surround yourself with people who see that without you having to convince them. Closing the door also means setting boundaries, not just with the person who hurt you, but with yourself. It's easy to fall into the trap of second-guessing your decision or romanticizing the past, especially when loneliness or doubt creeps in. But setting boundaries means standing firm in your choice, even when it's uncomfortable. It means reminding yourself why you made this decision and resisting the urge to reopen the door out of nostalgia or weakness. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you, they are safeguards meant to protect your peace and ensure that your energy is spent on people and experiences that uplift you. Taking back your power by closing the door is an act of courage. It's a decision to choose yourself, even when it feels easier to choose them. It's a commitment to your own growth and healing, even when it requires difficult conversations and tough love. And most importantly, it's a declaration that you are no longer willing to be a victim of someone else's actions. You are reclaiming your story, your strength, and your self-worth. The power to move forward has always been within you. Closing the door is simply the first step in unlocking it.